What's up, Breakthrough Success listeners? Marc Guberti, the podcasting coach here, helping people launch, grow, and monetize their podcasts. And one of the things we think about when we're monetizing our businesses, when we're trying to grow, is where do we invest our money to see that best return? So we have a guest today who's going to share with us how and where we can tactically invest in our marketing in order to have that greatest return, in order to have that awareness, that visibility, and also that revenue. So the guest who joins us today, she is a serial entrepreneur, investor, advisor, and award-winning marketing expert who has helped develop radical organization growth, including for 7 of the Fortune 100 companies. She is a recognized thought leader in places like Forbes, NBC News, Mashable, Thrive Global, BuzzFeed, and thousands of other publications. And she was recently named a breakthrough female founder by the Huffington Post. So our guest who joins us today for this episode of Breakthrough Success is none other than Jessica Higgins. Jessica, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you. Sorry my bio is so long, it's embarrassing.
Jessica, it is a really amazing bio. I mean, the amount of work you've done is really amazing. So I'm looking forward to diving into this episode because there's so many people who they understand marketing is important, but they want to know, how do I really leverage this? Where should I be putting my time? So for people wondering that, like, where do they figure out where they should be putting their time and dollars?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, if there was one easy answer, it would have already been, just put out there in the world by now. I think that so many people make money off of convincing everyone that, marketing is great, but leaving enough to be untold so that they can continue selling people this idea of marketing. And so we all are kind of being sold the same bill of goods. And I wish there was like a university or a step-by-step guide for it. But I would say that the one thing, if I could tell you to guide you in the right direction for where to spend your money wisely, is to really dive into the fact that A, you are not your customer, and B, you have probably very little actually in common with them. And then once you just take that step back of saying, like, I actually don't know what I'm talking about, then at that moment you're able to move forward and really dive in through an empathetic lens, call it design thinking or voice of the customer or what have you, but really understanding your customer's wants, needs, and desires. And when I say customer, that's an anomalous term because there are people who will be brand advocates for you that might not know about you yet. It's about attaching with those people who get really excited about your product and who are also willing to spend on your product or service. And then what do those people want? Like what makes them excited? And then if you can figure that out, that becomes your kind of secret formula. And then it comes down to like Facebook ads and those little tactical things that we all can talk about all day, but where you spend those dollars really is, I think, should be reverse engineered back to that customer conversation.
And it's really interesting how, I mean, there's so many tactics, and this is a great point that Jessica mentions. Like, you can use Facebook ads, you can use YouTube ads, you can like create organic content and promote that way, but it really comes down to doing some basic things. And I really like this idea of getting brand advocates. So I'm wondering, what's your suggestions for finding people who could become brand advocates and then activating the people who we currently have?
So I have a weird method that I use that I don't swear by for others, but I find that direct outreach is incredibly tedious, really annoying, takes a lot of time, absolutely the right direction. So I will sit on Instagram connecting with people person to person about my brand, reaching out, offering free samples, seeing what they like, collecting feedback, gathering information, and really honing in on who that target market is. And I think when you deliver value to people first and see how they react, that's the easiest way to understand, where you are and where you can go.
And I do like that direct outreach. That's also something I'm a big advocate for. Like with the podcast, a lot of this is direct outreach. I use LinkedIn more for my direct outreach than Instagram, but it is interesting you use Instagram for that because Instagram being a very big platform. Can you share with us like why you focus on Instagram for the direct outreach instead of like a LinkedIn or something else?
No, it's funny that you say LinkedIn because I think, so when we're talking product, I think Instagram is the best place for products right now. I really do. Just because it's tangible, you can see it, you can feel it. People are buying more on Instagram than they are. Like if you look at this recent story, Forever 21 is closing down its stores because these direct to consumer businesses all over Instagram are the #1 source for like women's clothing now. And, you know, I remember department stores being the #1 source for women's clothing. So you think about, you know, the large Forever 21 in the center of Caesar's Palace in Vegas is closing down because of Instagram. Then it should tell you that your product has a customer somewhere in that platform. And because it's a product business, it's visual and it works for that platform. I love LinkedIn for service-based businesses. So I don't do any direct outbound for my marketing agency. It's all inbound, and I've just published interesting thoughts, ideas, perspectives across LinkedIn, and absolutely the best way to connect with people for the most unforeseen reasons. But you kind of have to understand that that's a long tail. So I don't think it's a customer exploration platform. I think it's more of a like connecting around smart ideas kind of platform. But I would love to hear how you're using it, and if that, like, if I'm wrong and you're using it differently, because like I said, everything is different for everyone, and each person's success will be unique based on their business.
I mean, I use LinkedIn for services, like my podcast coaching or done for you service. Like that's what I'm on LinkedIn for. Like that's the thing I'm promoting. Now, I don't really go do outreach for people for my books on LinkedIn because I feel like LinkedIn is a business. Professionals, a lot more people there are business professionals, so business services make more sense. But it is interesting to use Instagram for just individual products, because that also makes sense, because you get people to take a picture of your book or something like that, and you get people on board that way. So really interesting to just hear how those two social networks are different. I do like it is a long-term game, but there are people who they want to see some short-term, like just something that proves that it works. So outreach and relationship building is a very long-term game. So how can we continue putting in the work for the long term, but see some kind of results now?
Yeah, I mean, everyone wants immediate results and to not have to do any work. So I think that's the kind of, so here's the thing, is that the reason people believe that that's possible is because you have life coaches and these business coaches who are selling you these ideas based on showing you images of them in a fancy car and then telling you that if you buy their 10-step guide to whatever, like anybody who's selling you the idea that they've figured some secret out and they're going to sell it to you, if they had actually figured out, they wouldn't be selling you that stupid thing. So don't listen to any of those people. It literally comes down to hard work. If you're going to build a business in 1875 or 2019, like you're going to have to put in the hard work and the effort and understand that you're going to take some L's. Like there will be some losses, and it will take a lot more time and effort than you could ever imagine, but just be patient and keep moving forward. And it was funny, like you said, with your book, promoting your book on LinkedIn, like we kind of have to reverse engineer of like, nobody's going to post your book on LinkedIn just because they're reading it, but they're going to post it on Instagram because they're reading it. So that's a great platform for, optimizing your efforts. And so I think you kind of have to take it as a quadrant of like, there's time on one side and there's money on the other. And like, which one of those buckets are you willing to dump into your baby and then go from there? So if you don't want to spend any time whatsoever on something, throw up some Google ads today, buy like 10K a month of Google ads and figure out which ones work. And you've put in 10K for 1 month and now you've got this one great Google ad that's delivering for you, or you kind of work out your budget. But you have to understand that, like, first of all, marketing is an investment in the long term. You can't just spend $10 on a Facebook ad and have an overnight business. Like, it just doesn't happen. So if you're willing to take a chunk of money that you want to invest or a chunk of time that you want to invest and throw it into something and figure out what's going to work for you, then, you just test all of these different platforms. And I think if you want to do something that gets good ROI quick, market to a group of people that other people are not marketing to, because people are more interested in products and services that they see themselves in. So for instance, gay men are more likely to buy a product that's directly created for them. Women of color are more likely to buy a product that's directly related for them. And those are two companies that I actually have an advisory and investment positions in. So those are the interesting markets for me right now. Is like, if you're really interested in collecting ROI quick, instead of focusing on the broad, really narrow it down and say, I made this for you, it's directly for you, and this is how it serves you. And people will buy an unknown product or service if they feel that they see themselves within that. And that is an incredibly long and roundabout answer to your very short question. I'm sorry.
I mean, it's a lot of really great insights, because I do feel like people want to like business coach, for instance, really caters to anyone with a business. But I will never say that I'm a business coach. Like, I'm more of podcasting. I know I help a lot of people who have books turn that into a podcast. And it's just this idea where, there's this general thing you can fit into, but if you fit yourself into general perspective, you really miss out on getting a ton of people, because then you're just like a me too. You're just a copycat. You're not really cool or unique if you go the general business coach route, but really think about how you can get more specific on who your customers are and what kind of service you can give.
But what you just described is providing value to people. Like, creating a podcast is one of those things that it's kind of like being a rock star. Like, everyone says they want to do it, but nobody's willing to sit and actually figure out how to play the guitar. Podcasts are really complex things that I would not myself ever do one. And so there are people like you who could do that for me. And you've just taken a huge amount of time and effort off of my plate. So I would be more than happy to pay you for that. And so that's an example of a real like value add, like saving people time, saving people effort. Writing a book is another great example. How many people do you hear say, oh, I really want to write a book? There are so many unmet needs in this world that, like, if you're talking about getting a direct ROI, I think that's a great example. It's just your time in exchange for, taking this horribly complex problem off of people's plates. And like, the worst way to create a podcast, by the way, is to try to create one, because midway through you're like, oh no, like this is actually really impossible or really bad. Like, it's really easy to create a terrible podcast. I've seen it happen.
Yeah. I tried twice to start a podcast, and this breakthrough success, this is my third attempt at starting a podcast. There's a story that I won't go into but pretty much I just had a ton of accountability and finally made this happen. So I've definitely been there, where it's like, you have this baby, you have this idea, and midway through you're like, this is taking forever, I don't know how to do this, and then you just go the other way. And I feel like that is something that really happens in marketing all the time, because Jessica was talking about Facebook ads, Google ads, and if you really get these things right, you don't have to do any marketing. Like, the ads do the marketing for you, but can you spend $1,000, get nothing back in return, and be okay with that? Because that may happen in the beginning, but then, as Jessica mentioned, 10 grand, you find an ad that works for you, you run it day and night, money keeps rolling in. So, I know that for ideas, like, you do have to get through that midway. So for all these different marketing tactics and how marketing is a long-term game, how do we stay strong at that midpoint instead of just dying out when it gets a little difficult?
Yeah, I think you have to have a really good understanding of what you're actually signing up for. Like, an associate of mine created a coffee company that went nowhere for years and years and is now everywhere. And he's killing it. And everyone goes, oh man, that guy's an overnight success, I want to be like that guy. But like, when he was starting out, there were 2-3 years that went by of nobody wanting to be like that guy, And so you just kind of have to keep going. And I think that's part of the game, is like, you can't play in a game if you don't understand the rules. And you have to understand that being an entrepreneur is like a lot of hard work and taking a lot of losses and having to explain to a lot of people that you're not an idiot, and just keep listening, keep watching, and this will work out. And then, over time you understand that your track record will come, because diligence and hard work are just like, unless you're completely out of your mind and doing something really that doesn't make any sense, your likelihood of success with diligence and a strong track record is really high. The difference between the best athletes, like, I have a girlfriend who's a top 100 tennis pro, and she said the difference between me and the other athletes who are not top 100 is that I didn't give up and I didn't get hurt. And so it's like, yeah, Sharapova was not the best in their tennis camp by any means. She was in the bottom half, but she kept going and she didn't get hurt. And so you just need to understand that the realities that we face, and if you're going to be okay with that. And then it's okay to be a hybrid. Like, you don't have to be a full-time entrepreneur. I was at dinner with someone last night who has a full-time day job, spends Saturday and Sunday working on his app. And, that app he understands it's going to move slower than somebody who's on it full time, but that gives him the comfort of being in both worlds. So just kind of figure out what works for you. And there is absolutely a way to find financial freedom through any of these like tools that we have that are just digitally free and available to us today, which is ridiculous. Any single person on earth can have a successful entrepreneurial venture. And so are you willing to be one of those people who just doesn't get hurt and keeps on going,
Yeah, you bring up a really great point, and I thought of the YouTuber Mr. Beast, because he's got like 22 million subscribers, some ridiculous number like that where he's set. But for 5 years, he created content and no one watched it. So it was 5 years of, no one seeing his content, and now all of a sudden he figured things out, and now he's this really big success. So it can take a while to get there. One of the questions that I do have, because, we could talk about marketing being a long-term game, but there's so many new additions like TikTok recently. I've been hearing a lot about that, and you can hear a lot about Instagram, Facebook. So how do we balance staying long-term with like an Instagram or a Facebook when these new things like TikTok, or like we want to try out YouTube, how do we continue to have that long-term focus?
Yeah, I don't know. Just do what you love and do what you're good at. Because if you're doing what you hate, you're not going to be good at it or as good as somebody who loves it. And if you're doing something that's not in your wheelhouse, you're just not going to be as good as it. Like, I am not funny enough to make a TikTok video. I won't do it because it would be stupid and I would not ever be good at it. And it's just not my thing. So I think, if you're in service of your product and you're trying to reach customers, you don't have to just do something because other people are doing it or because, everybody's joining TikTok. And like, I'm hearing all of this stuff about, young people are on TikTok. Look at how Facebook was, created. It started with college kids and now it's like these different demographics. Okay, fine, whatever. There's absolutely no reason that somebody who, isn't serving both their customer and themselves in a way that they're getting energy and feeling great, there's just no reason to do it. There are so many different, available platforms. And so when you're talking about keeping a long-term focus, versus focusing on short-term trends, anybody who's good at making videos, if you're not on TikTok right now, you're just wasting time. Like, get on there yesterday and do something cool. And it doesn't matter if there aren't a billion users yet. Those users will find you early and they will connect with you. And, that might move forward, that might not. Like, weird fact, I used to be a MySpace star. Nobody even knows what that is anymore. And it absolutely means nothing these days. But the people I was able to connect with in those early days when we were just like the few of us kind of on there, and then we built it up over time. And being a first mover on these things will always have value, even if it doesn't seem like it does in the moment. And I think, the keeping the long-term focus is just understanding that like every single day is a day to contribute to the world, and you just wake up and do it. And if it's making you happy and you've never succeeded it, you will eventually succeed at it, because my biggest failures were the ones that created the most success for me down the line.
And it's interesting you mentioned you used to be a MySpace star. Now, I was never in the MySpace space. I was probably really too young to even think about that kind of stuff. But I do remember Vine. And the difference between like a MySpace versus a Vine is that now if it's like, let's say, because Facebook's probably going to come out with some kind of TikTok clone, like it's, if you look at their plan, like strategy. But even if TikTok only makes it for a few years, granted it could make it much longer, I'm just saying, if you use TikTok to promote all of your other social media presences, you can now have larger audiences on all of them instead of just TikTok. So having a way to really create a circular motion where you get people bouncing around from social network to social network can help you, especially if you are one of these people who's posting to some place like TikTok and getting that early like platform exposure.
No, that's so true. It's funny you say that, because I remember the time that I realized that Twitter was about to go down, and I was like funneling every single person I knew over to my Facebook account, and then Facebook died, and I went, oh no. And now it's like there are all these latent kind of, nobody's even on there. How do you even get in touch with them? It's like losing your cell phone and losing all your numbers. Those people are just gone. So you're absolutely right. Like, it's so basic. I don't even think about it because I've been doing it, but you just keep funneling everyone to everything and connecting with you in different ways. And a really great way to do that is to tell pieces of your story on each different platform. So there's like, it was the chief storyteller at LinkedIn who came up with this, who's an associate. He's brilliant. He said, instead of creating one piece of content that you push out everywhere, you start in the opposite direction of like, you create this bedrock content piece or idea or what have you, and then you tell pieces of your story on each different platform, and that keeps people coming and connecting with you in different ways over time. And I think that's the kind of the sneakiest way to keep your audience active. But you're absolutely right. Like, these things come and go, and it can be a single bug fix can take an entire, like, I'm seriously concerned about Instagram's following right now because they're taking away likes, and it's an absolutely terrible idea. When people don't have that kind of satisfaction, those endorphin hits of like getting to see their likes and their social proof and their status, they're going to go away and they're going to use the next thing, whatever that is. I believe it. So we'll see. I could be wrong.
I mean, like, social networks, they could change their algorithms at any time. So like, even if the social network is still standing, like, you know, who's using Facebook pages to grow organically anymore? Like, it's not that time frame where you could just have a Facebook page and grow that way. Like, things are going to change. So it's good to bounce people around. We're going to try a different last question. We're obviously going to give Jessica the chance to share all of her awesome resources and her work, which we'll throw into show notes. But interesting question I've never really asked, but I've always been curious to see what would happen. We had this great conversation. We've shared a lot of stuff. If for some reason this was not recording and we both just realized this, what would be the one thing you would want listeners to know?
Oh man, no pressure. Jeez, I don't know. What do you think? What is your one thing? Like, I hate these questions. They're so bad.
I mean,
yeah, go. You gotta go. Go.
Okay. That's why we test things out. I would say that just understand that when it comes to marketing, look at what's giving you the best results and stay with that. Don't get distracted by something that isn't going to work for you. But at the same time, if you see a new opportunity and you feel like it makes sense, pursue it while still having the core of your strategy in play.
Okay, so I have one, and it's actually kind of controversial, so I like it. It's personal branding, because people are so like down on personal branding these days, but I believe that in the world where humanity trumps consumerism, because people love humans and they hate brands, I think if you can create your person as an honest and authentic brand, then whatever you sell, do, say over the long term, people will still have a level of buy-in that they wouldn't otherwise. Does that make sense? Like, you can like really, really screw up a million times, but if you're the kind of good, like you have a great smile, I feel like no one can possibly hate you. And it's like, if you can that, do you know what I'm saying? Like, you create those things about yourself that make you human and make you real, and you put those things out in the world. And so many people are scared to do that because the personal brands are like, you know, it's so cheesy these days, but they're really also incredibly important. Like, nobody cares what Richard Branson, you know, how he treats the help. We all like him. Like, we do. You can't help it. And so I think those are the types of things that can take whatever you're doing for the long haul, because I'm not looking as an entrepreneur for like this next year. I'm looking at like the next 60 years, right? So you have to think that way. Like, when we're all in our VR machines connected to each other, like, we're going to look for those people that we liked in the real world. You know, what are we going to do next? And how are we going to, you know, navigate these different platforms? I think personal brand always is going to win the day for anybody.
Jessica, I really appreciate that insight, and definitely the nature of this question being the first time I've ever asked it. So thank you so much for sharing that great insight. And for people who want to continue following you and consume your work, see what you're doing, where are some good places we could go?
Yeah, so you can read my crazy blog posts every day on jessicahiggins.co/blog. So it's jessicahiggins.co, and there are links in there to my fund of funds, my advisory board, and my like digital marketing agency and all that stuff. But I would say just reach out to me on LinkedIn or Facebook or anywhere. I'm on all of them. It's always jessicahiggins.co. So any way you like, just reach out and let's chat.
Well, all those links will be in the show notes for anyone's interested. We'll also throw in the strategy call link if you guys want to talk with me about your podcast or your YouTube, marcguberti.com/strategy. But once again, thank you so much, Jessica, for coming on Breakthrough Success. It was such a pleasure having you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. And send me a link too. I want to look at your podcast stuff.
Yeah.